There's a man I want you to think about for a moment. He drives a 2009 Honda Accord with fading paint near the hood. He packs his lunch every day in the same beat-up bag he's had for 6 years. His neighbors think he's struggling. His co-workers feel sorry for him. His own family has quietly suggested, more than once, that maybe he should treat himself more. Live a little, right? What nobody knows is that this man is worth $4.2 million. He doesn't owe a cent on his house. He has zero debt. His investment portfolio has been compounding quietly, invisibly, for 22 years. While the people around him financed cars they couldn't afford and posted vacations they were still paying off 3 years later, he was building an empire in silence. So here's the question that should stop you cold. What if looking poor is actually the most powerful financial strategy most people will never use? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at a luxury car the same way again. If you've ever felt like the economy is rigged against you, like the path to financial security only exists for other people, I need you to stay with me for the next several minutes, because what follows changed how I think about money, image, and what it actually means to win in this economy. There's also a number worth sitting with. The average American household now carries thousands of dollars in revolving credit card debt at rates north of 20%, while the appearance of success, the leased vehicles, the financed furniture, the vacations paid off over 3 years, keeps climbing. Looking successful and being secure have quietly become two completely different categories, and most people have never been taught to tell them apart. This is why the gap matters more than the salary. Two people earning the exact same income can live financial lives that are opposites of each other, simply based on what happens after the paycheck lands. One of them is building. One of them is performing. And from the outside, for years, you usually cannot tell which is which, until one day you can. There are two kinds of rich, and only one of them actually sets you free. The first is performative wealth, the kind you can see. The leased BMW, the Instagram vacation, the granite countertops in a house you're underwater on. This is wealth as theater, a costume worn to signal status to people whose opinions will never pay your bills. The second is structural wealth, the kind you can't see. Assets that quietly generate income. Investments compounding in the background. Real estate that cash flows while you sleep. This is wealth as infrastructure. Invisible and almost impossible to take away. Here's what should alarm you. Most people performing the first kind have almost none of the second. Most people building the second kind look completely ordinary from the outside. That's not a coincidence. That's a strategy. And today we're going to break down exactly how it works and how you, regardless of where you're starting from, can begin implementing it this week. But first, let me tell you about Maria. Maria came to the United States from El Salvador at 23 years old with $400, a suitcase, and a cousin's phone number she barely knew. She got a job cleaning hotel rooms in Miami, 6 days a week, $11 an hour, sending almost everything home to her mother and 2 younger brothers. The pressure to look like you're making it in America is relentless. Coworkers showing up in new sneakers. A girl from her home country posting pictures with a new car. Her own cousin talking about credit cards like they're free money. Maria told me once that the shame of looking poor in America, the fear of being seen as struggling, hurt more than the actual financial struggle. Because in America, your image is supposed to tell people who you are. But Maria made a decision that changed the trajectory of her entire family's life. She decided to stop caring what she looked like and start caring what her balance sheet looked like. That's a harder pivot than it sounds, because it runs directly against deep social programming. There's a psychological phenomenon called social proof, documented by Dr. Robert Cialdini in his book, Influence. The core idea: humans look to the behavior of others to determine what's correct and appropriate. We're wired to mirror the tribe, to signal membership. And in modern consumer culture, the way you signal membership is through spending. Get a raise, and the instinct is to upgrade something. The apartment, the car, the wardrobe, because visible spending has been conditioned into us as proof of progress. This is the trap nobody warns you about. The lifestyle inflation loop. You make more, you spend more, your fixed costs rise, and your savings percentage stays flat or shrinks. 10 years later, despite earning twice what you used to, you're just as financially fragile as when you started. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. And what's coming next might be the most useful thing you hear all year. Now let's talk about stealth wealth. Not as a trend, but as a financial philosophy with decades of proven results. The concept gained mainstream attention after Thomas Stanley's 1996 book, The Millionaire Next Door. Stanley spent 20 years studying American millionaires, and what he found shattered every Hollywood stereotype. The typical millionaire doesn't live in a mansion, doesn't drive a luxury car. The most popular vehicle among millionaires was a used American-made truck, doesn't wear designer clothes or take lavish vacations on borrowed money. The typical millionaire is usually a self-employed business owner or professional in an unglamorous field, plumbing, pest control, accounting, who has spent decades living well below their means while systematically directing the gap between income and spending into wealth building. Stanley called this group prodigious accumulators of wealth, contrasted with under-accumulators of wealth. Same income bracket. Dramatically different net worth. The only meaningful difference is what they chose to do with the gap. Same income, different choices, completely different outcomes. That should make you furious and hopeful at the same time, because it means wealth is not primarily a function of how much you make. It's a function of how much you keep. Here's the foundational principle, and I want you to write this down. Your financial success is determined not by your income, but by the gap between your income and your expenses and what you consistently deploy into appreciating assets over time. That gap is your savings rate, and the math behind it is blunt. Save 10% of your income, and retirement takes roughly 40 years. Save 20%, about 32 years. Save 35%, about 25 years. Save 50%, about 17 years. Save 70%, less than 10 years. Every percentage point you add buys back years of your life. How much is a decade of your life actually worth to you? Because that's the real trade. Social approval today, traded for the ability to tell your employer, your landlord, and the entire financial system, no thank you, 15 years from now. Is that trade worth it to you? There's a deeper psychological force at play too. Relative deprivation, the feeling of being worse off compared to those around you in relative, not absolute terms. Research from Harvard, Cornell, and the London School of Economics consistently shows it's one of the strongest drivers of compulsive spending. In plain language, you don't buy things because you need them. You buy them because someone around you has them, and you feel lesser by comparison. This is why moving into a wealthier neighborhood, even one you can technically afford, can quietly wreck your finances. Your reference group shifts, your neighbor's cars become your benchmark, and your brain starts manufacturing urgency to keep pace. People who genuinely understand money choose their social environment deliberately. They build friendships with people who talk about investments more than purchases. And here's the counterintuitive part. Studies show conspicuous consumption, spending specifically to be seen, is highest in lower and middle income households, not among the wealthy. The people driving an $85,000 SUV on a $72,000 income are not the people you should be taking lifestyle cues from. The loudest spenders are usually the poorest savers. Say that one twice if you need to. Back to Maria. At 27, she took a second job, weekend mornings at a bakery. She kept her modest one-bedroom apartment and her $3,200 Toyota Corolla. She started putting $400 a month into an S&P 500 index fund, learning from library books and YouTube videos. By 30, she had her first $20,000 invested. By 34, she'd earned a bookkeeping certification through a community college program and replaced the bakery job with higher-paying remote freelance work. Here's what people around her saw: a woman who worked a lot and didn't seem to enjoy money very much. Here's what was actually happening. Maria was stacking skills, stacking income streams, and keeping her lifestyle fixed while her earnings grew, routing every dollar of that gap directly into the market, month after month, with the discipline of someone who knew exactly what she was building toward. At 41, she bought a duplex in a working-class neighborhood, not with a zero-down loan, but with a 25% down payment she'd saved deliberately over 3 years. She moved into one unit. Her tenant covered most of the mortgage. At 43, she bought a second property. At 47, she sat across from me and told me her net worth had just crossed $1.1 million. She still drives a Honda. She still packs lunch sometimes. And she told me something I've thought about almost every day since. I used to be ashamed of looking poor. Now I understand that looking poor was the price I paid to actually become free. A quick but important caution here. Looking poor is not the same as being poor, and stealth wealth is not an invitation to deprive yourself of a meaningful life. A lot of people turn frugality into a religion of punishment, cutting spending on things that genuinely enrich their lives. And that approach burns out fast, the same way crash diets do. The actual framework is this: spend generously on experiences with people you love, invest in your health and skills without apology, give to causes that matter to you, and be ruthless only about eliminating spending designed to impress people who don't pay your bills. Research from Cornell psychologist Thomas Gilovich backs this up. Experiences generate more lasting happiness than material purchases. Not because things are bad, but because things require maintenance, depreciate, and invite comparison, while experiences become part of who you are. That trip to see your mother's home country with your kids? That's not wasteful. That's legacy. Here's the math that makes all of this concrete. A $900 monthly car lease, sustained over 10 years, is $108,000 out the door. Gone. Zero asset created. Now take that same $900 a month and invest it in a diversified index fund, earning the market's historical 10% average. After 10 years, roughly $185,000. After 20 years, approximately $650,000. After 25 years, over $1.1 million. One decision, repeated monthly, is the entire difference. What some call the eighth wonder of the world. Compound interest. Simply left alone to work. And the car was never really the problem. It's the car, plus the apartment upgrade, plus the wardrobe, plus the subscriptions, plus the finance vacation, each one small alone, together consuming the exact gap that builds wealth. There's also something economists call the immigrant wealth effect. First-generation immigrants in developed countries tend to accumulate wealth faster than native-born citizens at comparable income levels. Researchers point to a few consistent reasons. They compare their lifestyle to where they came from, not to their colleagues, which keeps lifestyle inflation in check automatically. Many come from circumstances where saving wasn't abstract. It was survival, which keeps urgency high. Families often pool resources and share costs across generations, and they tend to think in generational terms rather than quarterly ones, planting trees they may never sit under. Here's the catch. This effect tends to fade by the second generation, once children are fully assimilated into the consumer culture around them, facing the same social pressures as their peers without the lived memory of financial precarity. Which is exactly why passing down the philosophy, not just the money, matters as much as building the wealth itself. It's not enough to build it for yourself. You have to teach the thinking that made it possible, or the next generation may spend it trying to look like something they already are. Think for a second about the people in your own life you genuinely admire financially. Not the ones with the biggest cars, but the ones who seem genuinely free, who make decisions based on what they want rather than what they can afford. In my experience, the common thread is almost never income level. It's almost always the size of the gap between income and spending, and the consistency with which that gap gets deployed into assets over time. Freedom isn't a number. Freedom is a ratio, and you can start improving your ratio today, regardless of where you're starting from. Now let's map the actual 20 to 25-year execution, because stealth wealth isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a get-free-for-sure strategy. Years 1 through 5 are about foundation. This phase is underestimated because the numbers feel small. You're building the habit, not the portfolio. Eliminate high-interest consumer debt with ferocity. A 22% credit card rate is a guaranteed negative return that nothing in the market reliably beats. Build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund in a high-yield account. Kept liquid, not invested. This is insurance, not growth. Start your investing habit even at $25 or $50 a month, because the habit matters more than the amount in year 1. You're training your identity into someone who invests. And protect your income with life and disability insurance if anyone depends on you or your ability to work. Years 6 through 12 are acceleration. By now, if you've stayed consistent, compound interest is starting to show up visibly. This is the fork in the road. A raise makes the lifestyle inflator upgrade their car, while the stealth wealth practitioner increases their investment contribution. A bonus becomes a finance vacation for one, an extra mortgage payment or brokerage contribution for the other. From the outside, their lifestyles look almost identical. By year 15, the gap in net worth is not. This is also where real estate can start to make sense, conservatively, and only once your foundation is solid, because leverage simply amplifies whatever financial habits you already bring to it. Disciplined habits, and it accelerates your timeline. Undisciplined ones, and it amplifies your fragility. Years 13 through 20 are where compounding takes over completely. Market gains in a good year start exceeding what you earn from working. Numbers that once felt abstract, $300,000, $500,000, $800,000, become real, visible on a screen you check from your phone. If you've built even a modest real estate position, rental income may be arriving monthly without you trading hours for it. By year 20 to 25, the consistent stealth wealth practitioner is, by almost any projection, a millionaire, sometimes several times over. And here's the final irony. By then, they can afford everything the lifestyle inflator was buying all along. They usually don't want it anymore, because somewhere along the way, they discovered that freedom feels better than anything money can buy. One last warning before we close. The comparison trap doesn't disappear with wealth. It just gets more expensive. At 25, it's shoes and phones. At 35, it's neighborhoods and school districts. At 45, it's vacation homes and club memberships. The benchmarks shift, the dollar amounts rise, but the psychological mechanism stays identical at every income level. The only real defense is internal clarity about why you're building wealth in the first place. Not the generic answer, but the specific one. So your children never feel the fear you felt growing up. So you can care for your parents the way they cared for you. So your grandchildren inherit something more than debt. Find that answer, write it down, and read it on the days the pressure feels loud and the account feels small. Because here's the final truth about stealth wealth. It was never really about being invisible. It's about knowing exactly what you're building, having the discipline to protect it, and measuring your success by what your life actually is, not by what your life looks like. The people who look poor but are quietly becoming wealthy aren't suffering, and they aren't pretending. They're winning a game that most people don't even know is being played. And now you know the game. So tell me in the comments, which part of this hit you hardest, and what's the one financial decision you're going to make differently starting today? If this gave you real value, share it with someone who's grinding hard and deserves this perspective. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next one. The most powerful thing you own isn't sitting in your driveway. It's in your decisions. Every single one of them. I'll see you in the next video.